Welcome back to the Institute of Pop, and today we're going to do something a little bit different. We're going to take a deep dive into this album, The Pretenders 2 from 1981, and we're going to, at the same time, compare it to this album, The Pretenders' classic debut from 1979. And we're going to make the arbitrary and artificial decision that everybody knows every song on The Pretenders' first album, and we're going to match up boxing heavyweight style, each song, track 1 from Pretenders 1 versus track 1 from Pretenders 2, all the way through to the rest of the album, and see how we go. I'm excited. I've got my thin black tie on, which I don't think I've worn since the 1980s, and I don't think I've worn a tie since the 1980s. And I'm really intrigued whether this much-maligned second album, a sufferer of deadly second album syndrome, or difficult second album syndrome, is actually as good, potentially, or even better than the first. Let's find out. The Adulteress kicks off side 1 of Pretenders 2, lots of numbers there. And at first glance, it could be just seen as a sort of song that any pub rock band could come up with. That is until Chrissy brings in those sultry vocals talking about the danger and the shame of being a socially perceived pariah because of the subject matter and her situation. I love the line, "I go to the park with a bag of crumbs for the birds. That's where we meet without words." It's a cool track, and James Honeyman-Scott's harmonic inventions on the rhythmic guitar make it an absolute perler. So let's take that start to Pretenders 2 and compare it to the start of Pretenders 1. And that song is Precious, which we all know is a quiet, sedate song. No, it's not. It is one of the greatest opening songs to any album, not just debut albums in history, and features the most wonderful use, the greatest use in my opinion, of the F word. But not me, baby, I'm too precious now. Oh yeah. And I was listening to a podcast, Known Pleasures, done by 3 Australian guys on the post-punk new wave movement. Check it out. It's absolutely brilliant. And they were talking about, imagine buying that album, particularly maybe, imagine a situation where you ask your parents for Christmas if they'll buy you the Pretenders album, and they know it's safe because they've heard Brass in Pocket and Stop Your Sobbing. And we drop the needle down on side 1 and Precious, and all of a sudden this explodes out of the gate. Dangerous stuff indeed. So in this case, I'm giving the win for the head-to-head between The Adulteress and Precious to the first album. If we thought Precious was a little bit edgy lyrics-wise, then the second track on Pretenders 2 maybe even tops that. Bad Boys Get Spanked. It starts like a train out of control, and it's relentless. It just keeps going, and we get caught up in this maelstrom of musical activity. Chrissy hollers and yelps and screams all the way through, and it's a tease from start to finish. Maybe the whip sound effects are a little bit cheesy after all these years, but still, it's a great motivating song to really start pumping out the blood within the system. And how about this for a lyric? Don't you ever think about the consequences? Guys like you never do. That's the kind of stuff that whores are made out of. That's the kind of stuff that floors are made out of. Wow. It's not the first time there's a questionable sort of finishing to the couplet, but let's go up to the scoreboard and have a look. Bad Boys Get Spanked goes up against The Phone Call from the first album. Now, The Phone Call is a great song, very similar in many ways to Bad Boys Get Spanked, has that relentless urgency to it. It's a close call, but this time I'm going with Bad Boys Get Spanked. Message of Love is the next track up, and it seems to have a slightly different sound to the first 2 tracks on Pretenders 2, and that's probably because it was recorded for the EP, the In Between Albums EP, imaginatively titled Extended Play. And maybe that's where Pretenders 2 loses a little bit of its gloss, or did at the time, because Talk of the Town and Message of Love, both great singles, were on that EP, so they lost the element of surprise for the premiere of Pretenders 2. But what a track. I love Martin's drummings here. It's absolutely brilliant. James and Chrissy's guitars are so tight as they churn out the power chords. I love how Pete uses his bass as occasionally a walking counterpoint. And in lieu of a chorus, the middle section is this beautiful, dreamy soundscape that allows Chrissy's voice to be so melodious and take us away. And it's good. It's good, good, good. Like Brigitte Bardot. Yes, indeed. And I absolutely adore this track. And it goes in our head-to-head battle against Up the Neck from the first album, which again is a really good song. Nothing wrong with it, but it's no message of love. So here we go. Another point to Pretenders 2. We get to the seemingly obligatory Ray Davies and the Kinks cover early on the Pretenders 2 with I Go to Sleep. But this time it's a bit different because the Kinks never recorded it and it's been covered by many people throughout the years. It's an absolute thing of beauty. The impassioned vocals from Chrissy really give the sense of somebody going to sleep and imagining that you are here with me. And James's deft touches of harmony really showcase his skill at less is more in this case. So a wonderful song bordering on a masterpiece. And it goes up against, from the first album, Tattooed Love Boys, which is sort of an odd matchup indeed because Tattooed Love Boys has those jilted, syncopated rhythms and James's guitar frenzy on it. And it makes it a very close battle. But I'm going with I Go to Sleep. Birds of Paradise is the next song, and we start with jingling, jangling guitars, so that's always a good start to a song. I love the way the band halts to allow Chrissy the opportunity to sing We Were Two Birds of Paradise. It's absolutely sublime, as is the way that James's guitar chord just hovers over it all and is allowed to ring out and fade. There's a short, understated guitar solo which just hits all the right notes. Sometimes, though, maybe the lyrics are a bit ordinary. For example, this one: I thought about you in Stockholm and in Rome, me in my hotel room, you in your home. Maybe I wouldn't go so far as to say these lyrics are insipid, but they're certainly uninspired. The idea of rhyming Stockholm and Rome and home, Stockholm, Rome. But then again, maybe it's not the meaning of the lyrics which is that important, or the actual the words themselves, but it's the way they're delivered. Pretty impressive song. Then it's up against Space Invaders, which is an anomaly as it's an instrumental. I'm again loving James's breathtaking ideas here, but the outro of the Space Invaders computer game sound effects makes it a little bit dated. Not really a close one for me. I'm going with Birds of Paradise from Pretenders 2. Talk of the Town is the next song up. It's a killer single, more jingle jangle guitars here, yearning, wistful vocals. It's just a great pop song. We all know it. Enough said. Love the lyric. It's not my place to know what you feel. I'd like to know, but why should I? So, because we know it all, we know this song so well, let's put it immediately up against The Weight from the first album. And this is a killer song, an unbelievable punk swagger vocal delivery from Chrissy. And Pete's bass punches through the mix and reminds me so much of Graham Maybe from Joe Jackson's band. And that is the highest praise that I can give to a new wave bassist, or potentially any bassist at all. Dangerously wicked guitar playing from James. It just takes it into another stratosphere. The Weight is a killer, wonderful, stomping rock song, and it takes the money here for me. I think I've just heard Talk of the Town too many times. So I hope I've made the point that the first side of Pretenders 2 should not be dismissed as mere copy, instead that it is an unbelievably, indisputably brilliant side of music. But what about side 2? We begin with Pack It Up, which is a straight ahead rocker basically until Chrissy starts singing. And again, it's James's harmonic upper range guitar lines which really give the song a bit of edge and bring it to life for me. The lyrics are quite intriguing. I like those too. And if I can just read for you: and what about your mind and your insipid record collection? That dumb home video center, the usual pornography that you scum lap up. You're the pits of the world. Wow, then now there's some attitude right there, and fantastic. Thank God it's there. Um, as I said, not the greatest start to side two, but we're going to put it up against the song which I think ends side one of the Pretenders, and that's Stop Your Sobbing, the old Kink song. And for me, this is a dead heat, and it's probably because I've heard Stop Your Sobbing so many times, and it's never really worked for me, and it seems kind of out of place on the first album. I know that you may have a different view. Please feel free to write it down in the comments and take me to task. Withering comparisons to the first album may be gaining some momentum, a bit of a foothold with the next tune, Waste Not, Want Not, because it's a reggae inspired number. And one gets the sense that we're going to have a surf rock number, we're going to have a Kinks number, and we better get in a reggae inspired tune as well. It doesn't hold a candle to the burning flame that is Private Lives from the first album. And where's that innovative guitar solo, I ask you? It's disappointing, and there's a sense of cloning going on here. But we're not comparing it, strangely enough, to Private Lives. We're going to compare it to Kid. And I know a lot of people love this song, but that surf rock guitar riff doesn't really work for me. Still, the song does come alive after that riff disappears, and it's a beautiful poignant number. So in this on this occasion, we're going to give the biscuits to Kid from the Pretenders' first album. Day After Day opens with a great riff from James, and Pete's driving bass allows Martin the opportunity to syncopate. But it's not a memorable song for me, and one does start to wonder about the track listing on both albums, because there was plenty of killer on the second side of the Pretenders' first album with things like Private Lives and Brass in Pocket, and yet there seems to be, at this point, quite a bit of filler on the second side of Pretenders 2. And that plane crash that ends the song during a promising opening guitar to a guitar solo from James is really out of place and quite disastrous. So Day After Day goes up against Private Lives, and for me, there's no mystery in this achievement. Private Lives is perhaps their greatest achievement. I love this song to death. The guitar work by James is just manic. The lyrics are sultry and delivered with beautiful poise and poignancy. And the only downside to me about this entire song is that guitar solo towards the end is way down in the mix, and it should be just elevated so it just cuts through. Now, if you need a bit more of that, I really recommend checking out the live performance of the band doing this song at Rock Palast. Yeah, Grace Jones, Eat Your Heart Out. The Pretenders version is number one. So in this case, it's Pretenders 1 that gets the chocolates. It's hard to get in the mood when you're treated like some kind of dog food. And on Jealous Dogs, I kind of get the feeling that I am being treated that way. There's a seemingly cool groove which starts the song, and I like James's guitar playing between the first verse and the second verse. But then the groove actually just plods along, and I think the rhythm section's got to take some responsibility here. It's all just 1, 2, 3, 4, and the chorus of Jealous Dogs never reaches the heights that it needs to get to. So if it wasn't for James's playing, I think this song is fairly aimless. And then it goes up against that monster in Brass in Pocket, which is just pure pop perfection. We all know the track, and we all know how brilliant it is. And on paper, this contest is a bit of a mismatch, sort of like uh, Iron Mike Tyson and James Buster Douglas. But when the needle drops, there's going to be no upsets here. It is a mismatch. And again, Chrissy and James are just superstars on this track. What a song. So a point to the Pretenders' first album. The English Roses is up next, and there's a pretty cool riff to open the song, but then it sort of plods along into Chrissy Hynde meets Status Quo, and that's not the greatest thing in the world unless you love Status Quo. I don't kind of happen to like Status Quo that much, if at all. Anyway, what makes it special is the delicate and mournful lyrics of loss and longing from Chrissy here. If I can read, this is a story, fruit cut from the vine, forgot and left to rot long before its time. I just wish there wasn't that boogie rhythm underpinning everything, because it's hard to be original and exciting and inspirational when that's what you got to work with. And then we put it up against the song from Pretenders 1, the ballad, The Lovers of Today. Another tremendously brilliant song. A chorus for me, short of a masterpiece. It's a good chorus, but I wish it was even greater. And that guitar solo. You know, James Honeyman-Scott here sets the template for all the new wave guitar slingers of the 1980s. Innovative, original, and brilliant. So that's a point for the first album. Pretenders 2 finishes with Louie Louie, a song that I first came into contact with when they played it on the Kenny Everett video show, which was compulsory viewing back in the day for, I'm sure, many of us. And it's a full-on stomper that wears its influence to Motown like a badge of joyous freedom. And then in come the horns. Now, if you know me, you know I don't really like horns and horn sections in my music, but in this case, it works perfectly. It's a defiant oppositional statement to end the album, and it just kicks so hard until we go into the patty cake section where we bring it right down to Martin's drums, Chrissy and the boys on vocals, Pete comes in with the bass, and then James just wigs it out with another one of his manic solos to finish the album. They absolutely saved the best for last. Burning trash, freaking class, all the white trash, yeah. Absolutely amazing. And it's up against, for our last song, Mystery Achievement. And I might have talked about the achievement before here. There's no achievement for Mystery Achievement. It's all Louie Louie, and Pretenders 2 finishes off by getting the final point in our head-to-head showdown. Well, that was pretty close, wasn't it? And I'm sure that many of you, when you started watching this video, might have assumed that I was going to rank Pretenders 2 more highly than Pretenders 1. And to tell you the truth, that's kind of how I thought it was going to sort itself out as well. But still, what we're left with is a thumping couple of albums, each with a magical side of music. And in a dream world, in a parallel universe, I'd love to get my hands on a pressing on which side A had side 1 of Pretenders 2 and side B had side 2 of Pretenders 1, if that makes sense. Throw in Louie Louie to finish, and of course, we'd have to drop the needle on Precious to start off with. And that would give me an enormous amount of pleasure. And speaking of pleasure, if music of any shape or size gives you pleasure, then who am I to argue with your opinion? And if you'd like to hear more of my opinions on music, please follow the links. Until next time, hope you're all well, and bye now.